Hey everyone, welcome to Shop Talk. We're going to do a little testing on a Husqvarna 359 chainsaw and go over some of the procedures I use to help quickly diagnose what the running issues are on a chainsaw. And if you're going to pursue working on chainsaws and be good at it, I would recommend investing in a few quality tools. One of them being this pressure vacuum tester, very high quality. I do sell these. If you've got any questions about it, let me know. We'll go over some of the procedures we use. In about 5 minutes or less, I've stripped down this chainsaw and I've got it down to the cylinder, and as you can see here, top cover's off, cylinder cover's off, muffler's off, drained the fuel. You want to look at the fuel. Always check the fuel of every saw that comes in. Make sure it's got the mix in it. Make sure there's no water in it. You'll see fish eyes in the bottom if you got a little water in your fuel. And do the sniff test. Make sure it's not stinky fuel. Muffler's off, and I remove the muffler to inspect it, and I don't do a compression test. I would much rather take the muffler off, see what kind of condition that piston's in. Look in there, and what you're looking for is a nice clean surface. This is a used piston, but it's in good shape. You can see some of this little browning. That's normal around the top and bottom of the rings. And it's good and clean, and the rings are free. This came out of one that was scored, and you can see the scuffing on it. The ring is partially stuck. It's possible this saw would probably start, not run good. Now if that ring, if you've got scuffing on here and the ring is free, it will just run poorly. And especially when it warms up, it'll really start running poorly, not idling good. You can keep it wide open, but it just won't idle. I've got the vacuum gauge, pressure gauge hooked up to the fuel line. It's very common on the saws of this day to have fuel lines with holes in them because of the fuel that we run in them. It's really hard on fuel lines. So everyone pressurize every fuel line, vacuum test, pressure test it, and stretch it a little bit. As you do this, just give it a little stretch, and if there's any perforation, it'll instantly show up, your gauge will drop. This gauge is great for checking carburation issues. On the saw or off, you can do a quick check. You can plug into the line like I did here, and what you're checking for is the needle seat sealing, and you can also check the diaphragm, the fuel pump diaphragm, if you have the extra nipple on it. Check your fuel filters on the saws. These are Husqvarna filters, and there's some common issues on these. A new filter, nice and clean. This is a used one. It's still good. You can see the browning starting to show up on the bottom. This one is pretty much plugged. And the reason they show up on the bottom, you don't see much of this coloration on the sides. So always look on a Husqvarna filter, look on the bottom. This is one I've taken apart to show you. All this is a weight. Helps the filter to follow inside the tank, the fuel. But you can see it works as a double filter, and the centerpiece is where it picks up most of the fuel, most of the vacuum action is, and of course the bottom will pick up most of the debris first and will plug. Do recommend testing each new filter you put on with your little gauge. I've had these from the manufacturer have a little flap of the material and not work properly, and it'll drive you crazy trying to figure that one out. And this gauge is great for vacuum pressure checking the crankcase. If I want to do that, I would use one of these blocks, put the muffler back on, do the same on the carburetor side, loosen it up, slide this down here, cinch it up. Then I have an adapter that plugs into the spark plug hole. I can pressure vacuum test. I pressure check first. If it passes that, do a vacuum test. And the reason you want to do both, on a vacuum test, it actually sucks out, and you can see if the lips on the seals are sealing properly. A lot of times they'll pass the pressure test, but not the vacuum test. Well, that's just some of the things I've done. There's a lot more we'll go over in time, but if you have any questions, feel free to get hold of me.